To wrap up our morning general session will be Verizon. They're going to be talking about the 2016 Verizon Data Breach Digest review. Bhavesh, boy, I knew I was going to do this. Bhavesh Chauhan is a principal client partner, security evangelist with Verizon CTO organization. Previously led the security engineering and professional services for the Northeast region of Americas, which includes enterprise, government, and education customers for Verizon. Bhavesh has over 15 plus years in cybersecurity and business continuity solutions. He'll be discussing the 2016 Verizon Data Breach Report. Please give him a warm round of applause.
So good morning, everyone. Wow, we've already had 5 great speakers. So I'm trying to think, what are the key messages and takeaway? And Russ just asked me how to wrap up the whole session. So first of all, thank you so much on behalf of Verizon to be part of this community and sharing our vision, our thought leadership of how we can help the members of this community as part of the Cyber Security Symposium. I was just frantically making some notes, about the previous speakers. There were some great points touched upon, and I thought, how do I bring it all together so it benefits the audience? If we start off with the first one, State of Oregon, they touched upon the incidents and breaches, the importance of having a strategic program. We heard University of California touching upon the breach, cyber risk program, the importance of visibility into your environments, right? The controlled readiness, and one of the key points, threat is uncontrollable. All you can do is control the readiness. So I'm going to touch upon the threat. There was a great point made there. Gartner touched upon the security governance, the security program. Cisco touched upon the visibility and the NIST cybersecurity framework. The reducing the risk to the acceptable levels. And Deloitte touched upon the cybersecurity study and the cybersecurity initiatives. But if you look at the end, towards the end of the Deloitte's presentation, lack of funding, resources, sophistication of threats. So how do we move forward in this environment? So my focus is, using the data breach investigations report and scenarios from the field, right? I'm going to use this. How do we move forward? How can I make you impactful? So I've touched upon 3 areas. Understanding the threat, number 1. If we understand our threat, we can prioritize our focus and resources, which is one of the key challenges, and so that we can do more. How do we make you more impactful? And those are the key points I'm going to touch upon. So I think you're all familiar with the nacio studies. nacio conducts a survey of the state CIOs to identify and prioritize the top policy and technology issues facing the state government. Number 1, security and risk management. What can Verizon do? What are we doing? Being the number 1, the top the communication solution provider to the US public sector. So some examples. As you see on the screen, there's a number of research in the data sciences. By the way, this is all available for free. How do we help our customers, in specific here, the US public sector customers? And I'll start with the one on the very top, which talks about the data breach investigations report. And I thought I might ask a question. How many in the audience have come across the data breach investigations report? Oh, great, thank you. Nice to see a lot of hands. Okay, so as you know, it's all about who did what to whom and what was the outcome. We've been publishing this data breach investigation report with almost 70 international contributors, many of them in the Americas. And our goal is to understand the threat landscape and getting it down to the specific vertical level, i.e. the public sector, the finance, and so on. What we did was, as we learned from these data breach investigations, right, that 90% of the incidents can be classified into 9 incident patterns. This year, for the first time, we are sharing our Data Breach Digest, which is what I'm going to touch upon. Data Breach Digest is about, Verizon has a forensics team, one of the largest non-military forensic service provider for the last decade. We carried out over 500 forensics investigations in 2015 across 40 countries. And what we've done, wouldn't it be great if we can take all our forensics files, all our forensics cases, anonymize them, obviously, for the right reasons, right? And share that, with our customers, everyone, so that we can focus our efforts and prioritize our controls, our risk management programs, and so on. So the Data Breach Digest focuses on the threat scenarios, and I'll go into details as I move forward. So that's the Data Breach Digest. The third one is the PCI. I know to some of the members in the audience, PCI is important to them because you have PCI data. We do similar study for PCI. That's available. That's almost in our 4th publication now. Where what we do is we are one of the world's largest PCI QSA. So we take almost over 500 PCI assessments we do across the globe, put them from a merchant, non-merchant provider, prioritize the areas so that to help the industry is what can we learn from the assessments we've done for other customers. Obviously, they're anonymous, but that's freely available as well. The next one is the VARIS, the vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing. As you know, the Data Breach Investigations report, we're looking at the real security incidents from almost 70 international contributors. US CERT is a partner. We receive all the security incidents associated with public sector. We're using this methodology. This is freely available. So if you're working on an incident response across your enterprise, right, you're looking at some form of a framework or structure, this is freely available. We use for the development of our DBIR and the Data Breach Digest report, but this methodology you can use within your organization to see if it can help you with improving your security incident capture, categorization, prioritizing controls, and so on. And the last one, I think there was a key message with regards to Internet of Things. IoT is a great area for Verizon as well. We added many million, almost 10 plus million connections on our Verizon wireless network with regards to IoT, a great focus area. And there are some great use cases within IoT. And in fact, for the public sector, I'll give you an example. 40% of the municipality cost can be attributed to street lighting. If we had an IoT solution, if we can reduce that cost by even a small fraction, it could be monumental in terms of the benefits it can provide to the citizens of the state. So there are some great use cases within the IoT report. It defines the methodology, the architecture, and the various scenarios across various verticals. So I urge you, all these are available. There are members of the Verizon team on the booth as well and in the audience as well. There are subject matter experts who would be more than happy to provide not only just the information, but follow-up conversations and so on. So these are, what you see on the screen is the contributors for our Data Breach Investigations report. Just close to 68 contributors. And you can see from technology partners to the likes of Deloitte, to the likes of ISACs, law enforcement agents like US Secret Service and so on. The importance is we are getting real actionable data, real security incidents which have happened in the previous 12 months. Okay, we're analyzing this. And when you look at this, it provides you a global perspective. It provides you a perspective not just from the law enforcement agencies, but other sectors as well. So when you're working on a risk management program or an initiative internally, this is going to provide you some real actionable data, the data science journey, right, which you can use as part of whether it's a policy development, whether it's an architecture, review. It's going to give you some real data points which will assist you and make you more impactful. So this is the journey of the last decade. We started in 2008 just with the Verizon caseload of our forensics investigations, and today we have 70, just close to 70 contributors. But I think the key message over here is if we can understand who's doing it, why they're doing it, then I think what can be done to prevent it. Because I asked the question, does this report tell you everything what went wrong globally? No, it doesn't. Is there anything else out there which can tell you that? I haven't come across. So by having more and more partnership across the industry and more contributors, it is helping us to define the threat landscape much better. It's like hacker's playbook. hackers are not magicians, right? If we can understand the hacker's playbook, they are human beings, so are we. If we can develop some program internally, learning from this, it's going to make us more impactful. So the 2016 caseload, just to give you an example of the caseload, the scope of the data for this year's report, we had over 100,000 incidents. Our risk team analyzed those incidents, and there were just over 2,200 confirmed data breaches across 82 countries, right? So you can see that the scope of the data is very wide, but every security incident is mapped to the federal government issued NAICS code, if you're not familiar with, North American Industry Classifications Code. What that means is that we could look at this data, ask the question, how many incidents occurred across public sector? Because every enterprise has an NAICS code issued by the federal government. You can ask a question saying how many incidents occurred across finance, how many across healthcare, and it gives you that very meaningful understanding of the threat landscape granularly. So what do we derive? You know, I literally have 10 minutes. I have a session after this where I'm going to go through in detail this report. Well, one of the things, you know, we concluded from this year's report is time to compromise versus time to discourage. A lot has been stated about the security monitoring, improving the detection intensity. But when you look at this chart here, what is the x-axis is the last 10 years, because we've been publishing and analyzing this report for almost a decade now. The vertical y-axis talks about percentage of time where it took days or less, right? So when you look at the bottom line, the blue line, it's the good guys. How effective, how quickly are we able to detect an incident? Some form of unwanted activities has been occurring across the enterprise. You can see it's getting better. There is some progress, right? Ask yourself the question, the amount of investments and the focus you've been doing over the last so many years, right? It would be great position that we are able to detect an incident very quickly, as they occur, in fact, at the early stages of the kill chain. When you look at the top line, or there, is the time it takes a bad threat actor to carry out a compromise in days or less. So what that really means is the time it takes to carry out a compromise has reduced it down to seconds, minutes, and hours. And there's a huge gap. We call it the detection deficit. So if we can focus our efforts in reducing the detection deficit, it's going to certainly help us more impactful. So just for reference here, public sector data. In this year's report, there were just over 47,000 incidents across public sector. We received the data from the US CERT, so that's where we're using the reference. But I think more importantly is how many of those incidents where there was some form of confirmed data loss had occurred. And there were just about 193 breaches confirmed across public sector in this year's reports. In the last 12 months, so in 2015, 193 confirmed breaches across public sector. And then the report goes into details of understanding for each of those verticals what it means. So if I had to take it at a very high level, what are the top 5 incident patterns where there was a data loss across public sector? Miscellaneous errors, 37%, right? You can see the challenge. I heard about yesterday as well, education and awareness, a key aspect of the security program. But I think miscellaneous errors, a key challenge for the public sector. Second, cyber espionage. So you can see, as security professionals, whether you're working on a risk program, governance, or compliance, right, there's only so much time, effort, and resources available to us. There are so many assets we have across the enterprise, right? There are so many vulnerabilities across which may reside against those. If we can prioritize based on what made the bad threat actor successful in the last 12 months, it gives us a great starting point. We're not saying that you ignore the rest, but it's a great starting point saying at least we are solving the known problem to the industry. And by the way, this is not just for 1 year. This is for the last 10 years. So you can see the year-on-year trends. All the reports are available online, or a member of the Verizon team will be happy to assist you. I'll go to the detail in my next session, but just to wrap up the Data Breach Digest, a minute or so on set, Russ, is the Data Breach Digest. We've taken the last 3 years of our forensics case files. We had just under 1,200 forensics investigations we carried out in the last 3 years. And when we analyzed those forensics investigations, there was a lot of commonality. We're using the US Army COP, Common Enemy Course of Action methodology to develop this. And there are 18 threat scenarios. 12 based on, how often they're occurring. And it is alarming to learn that almost 60% of the forensics investigations of those 1,200 in last 3 years can be attributed to 12 threat scenarios. And 8 are based on the lethality. So 2 aspects, frequency and the lethality. These are the 18 threat scenarios. And for each of the threat scenario, our goal is to explain to you the characteristic of it, who the threat actor is. Let's understand the motivation. How often does it take, how much time does it take to contain and for them to carry out a compromise. But ultimately, where we are ending with this is we are providing you a mapping to the critical security control. So you can go back to your policy design board and say, where do I focus my efforts? It's great if we understand that this a particular threat scenario is more prevalent across public sector. Where do I focus my efforts? So what you see is something like this. I've just got an example here. So at the bottom, you will see the mapping to the critical security control. So you can go back to the SANS Top 20 or the CSC reference documentation and focus your efforts in those particular areas. And just to sum up, when you look across all the verticals, for public sector, you can see there, crimeware and insider and privilege misuse is the 2 incident patterns which provided the most breaches in the last 3 years across US public, where Verizon had carried out an investigation. This is obviously based on the Verizon caseload. But it helps you to focus on, so as you can see at the bottom, these are the threat scenarios you can focus on. This is readily available online. We can provide it to you, but it will hopefully make you more impactful going forward. So thank you so much. I have a session after this where I'll go into detail. Russ?
Thank you. All right, everybody.